How good a tree can you make with Woodland Scenics armatures? Can you actually make a tree that can compete with wire armature trees? Find out today at Trains and Dioramas. Hello and welcome. I'm your host Kaustav Chatterjee, and today I'm going to show you my methods of using Woodland Scenics armatures to make these beautiful trees. Of course, I'll also be using some Woodland Scenics turf, seafoam, as well as some paints.
I am currently modeling in N scale, so the trees will be made keeping that proportion in mind. However, the same methods can be used for HO scale as well.
Now, I release 3 videos a month covering various topics of model railroading, diorama, scale models, model scenery, and many other miniature topics. So if you are interested in any kind of miniatures, please hit that subscribe button and the bell icon so that you do not miss any new releases.
We'll start with 4 armatures, a couple of them for today's demonstration and the other 2 for one of the future episodes. For tools, I'll start with a hobby knife and a cutter. The first job is to separate the base from the tree. I generally use the sprue cutter to cut the base off. Alternatively, the hobby knife can be used to simply cut the sprue joint to separate the base. I'll not be using the base in my layout, however it is very handy to use them while making the tree and also for demonstration and storage. The tree can be fixed to the base whenever required. To start the preparation, I use my hobby knife to remove the thin shim lines that is created at the mold joint. I mostly focus on the very obvious part of the trunk that can be easily seen. I just run my knife on the shim line to remove material in an irregular fashion. Then it's time to handle the sprue marks on the trunk. Given these armatures are molded, you can find both recessed and raised sprue and channel remnant on the trunk. For the recessed marks, I simply use my hobby knife to cut the surrounding areas unevenly. For the raised sprue marks, I just cut the part flush with the surrounding trunk. Trick here is actually to be very rough and irregular and not precise. Once the sprue marks are dealt with, I use my hobby knife to make the bark texture in the affected area. I simply cut some lines with the hobby knife in the area where I removed the plastic from. Notice that I often don't just scratch the surface, I also wiggle the knife to create some believable bark texture. Now that the preparation is done, it's time to start with the actual tree building. I'm drawing my inspiration from large trees with great trunk like hickory or dogwood, so I started with a quick lookup in Google to find some generic details like the shape, the bark color, bark texture, leaf sizes, etc. I decided to go for dark to medium gray bark for the main trunk, medium gray smooth bark for the branches, and small individual leaves. The first step is very important, shaping the armature. The shape of the armature depends on the type of tree that you're modeling. I start by twisting the middle trunk by hand. However, as soon as I have some workable space, I switch to a plier. Now it's time to separate the branches and start creating the base structure. Notice that I'm twisting and turning the branches pretty ruthlessly, exactly the way one handles a wire armature tree. I have to admit that I was surprised at first to see the strength and flexibility of these plastic armatures. Clearly, I'm twisting and turning those branches as if they are made of wires. Obviously, there is no sign of any failure, rather these twists and turns are actually creating some very believable trunk and branches because of the existing bark texture. So if you're not looking for truly fine-scale trees that require hours of sculpting, these armatures can be a good alternative to save time. You twist, turn, shape, and you're good to go. One important aspect of modeling trees is to be unpredictable and break repetitive patterns consciously, because no two trees are identical. I'm making 2 trees and they already started developing their individual characters. Enter Seafoam. These natural products make excellent branches for the canopy. You can get them from various distributors like Scenic Express, Gagemaster, Heki, and possibly others that I'm not aware of. What you're seeing here are basically the flowers of the plant which is scientifically called Teleucis aristata. The intricate branch structure of this is what model makers crave. You can spot dried leaves and a lot of seeds in these. It is possible to just remove the dried leaves and use the branches with the seeds. However, I want to clean them up properly so that those little seeds do not look unnatural in close-ups. These seeds can be repurposed and used as N-scale fruits though. It is easy to remove the seeds, but a little time consuming. For really small branches, I used a pair of tweezers to gently pluck the seeds. They pop right out and you get a clean set of branches. For larger and stronger branches, I simply used my nails to brush the branches. Once clean, it is time to attach these little branches to the armature. I use a gel-type superglue to attach these branches to the main armature. Gel superglues are less runny and takes a while to cure, providing more time to adjust the joint while attaching them. It is my go-to adhesive for these type of work. I start from the innermost branches, then gradually work my way from the lower areas to the top. The idea is simple: areas difficult to access should be done first. Here you see me working on one of the trees. Notice that just like the armatures, I'm bringing some variety in the branch structure as well. The smaller tree has a much more airy feel, while the larger one has more volume and a circular structure and even density. Again, consciously breaking pattern is also important to make sure not every set of branch is attached the same way. Here are the trees with all their branches. It's time to start painting. First, I used spray paints for the base coat, so I needed to fix my tree to something solid. I took a large tube carton and attached one of the tree bases using blue tack. This helped me hold the tree in place while applying spray paint. This way, I could also keep changing the trees easily. The first paint I used is dark gray. I always shake the paint can well before use. In addition, though I am doing this indoors for this video, spray paints can cause serious health hazards. Please do this outdoors and wear a protective mask before using any aerosol paint product. Here I'm painting the trunk and the lower branches. Notice that I'm spraying intermittently and not constantly to control the application and to make sure that it is reaching exactly where I want it to. For the upper branches, I'll be using nut brown. Basically, any dark brown will do. Once done with the first tree, I just changed the tree and went on with the bigger one. After spray painting them, the models are left for a few hours for the paint to cure. The next step is creating the bark texture, and I'm going to use medium gray, yellow ochre, and raw sienna for the mix. Almost all trees have gray bark, but the shades of gray vary greatly, and it's often a complex mix of gray, yellow, brown, red, green, and even blue. In this case, I've chosen a simpler combo. I mixed the paint in matte medium, then with a hard bristle brush, I started dry brushing the trunk. Note how this highlight on top of the dark gray base brings the bark texture almost instantly. This was done for the main trunk and lower branches for both the trees. The last step of the painting job is airbrushing. I took the same paint mix formula of the dry brushing step and created an airbrush mix. In addition to gray, yellow ochre, and raw sienna and matte medium, I added airbrush medium to bring that milk-like consistency to the paint. You see me making a big batch here because there are many more trees to make, so I don't want to repeat this step. While pouring in the airbrush cup, I mixed a little more of the airbrush medium and started painting the upper branches. The dark brown base would automatically give it proper shading. Note that I kept the pressure at 25 psi to make sure that those delicate branches don't break due to excessive force. Here you see me giving the first coat, after which both the trees were left overnight for everything to cure. Next morning, I applied the second coat of the gray to the upper canopy and created a smooth transition from the plastic armature to the seafoam branches. It was also important to hide the superglue joints effectively. Once the paint had cured, I gave it a thorough coat of Dullcote lacquer to take off any uncharacteristic shine from the armature and the branches. This is how the trees looked at this stage. And now for the big transformation, foliage. I used two tones of Woodland Scenics Coarse turf, light green and medium green. Then I took some acrylic matte medium and applied to the lower and inner branches using a paintbrush. Then I took some turf and gently pressed them against the branches where I'd put the medium. Undiluted acrylic mediums have decent adhesion properties for light gluing, and when they dry, they don't leave behind any shine. That's why I use this for gluing turf. Mod Podge matte can also be a great alternative if you do not have matte medium. Notice that there are times that my fingers cannot access certain hard-to-reach areas, and I'm using a pair of tweezers to put the turf in the right spot. Also, after each application, I'm tapping the base to shed any excess directly to the container. It is possible to use spray adhesive and then just dip the armature in the bowl of turf, but I wanted better control and precise application, hence this individualistic approach. Notice that I'm using both the light green and medium green tones. Most trees will have a mix of at least two colors throughout the year. The light green can simulate two types of leaves: juvenile leaves that still do not have adequate level of chlorophyll, and also dying leaves that have started losing chlorophyll. My layout is in late summer, early fall, so this mix is essential to simulate that season. The final step is to add individual leaves and highlights. Now the commercial products that I have would be too large for N scale and the type of foliage these trees have. So I decided to improvise. I took a dried almond leaf that still had some chlorophyll left, tore a few small pieces from the leaf and put them in a strong metal strainer. I then pressed and rubbed the dried leaves against the wire mesh. This made small leaves that dropped right on top of the tree. As you can see, this creates subtle highlights that can represent sun-kissed leaves or even dried leaves. At last, I sealed everything down with another thorough coat of Dullcote lacquer. And here is the final result. These trees definitely look very good for N-scale and can be used as foreground trees. For HO, these can be foreground trees for normal models, or the middle layer of trees between foreground and background trees in highly detailed fine-scale layouts or dioramas. Did you find this tutorial interesting? Will you attempt to make trees in this fashion? If not, then how else would you model a tree? Leave your comments below and give this video a like if this was helpful. Thank you for watching. Bye!